The $3 Ranch. The deed and the dust. The Arizona sun beat down mercilessly on the cracked earth as Sam Mackenzie stepped off the dusty stagecoach in the small frontier town of Copper Creek. The year was 1887, and the Wild West was slowly giving way to civilization, though you wouldn't know it from the ramshackle buildings and the tumbleweeds that rolled lazily down the main street. Sam clutched a leather satchel containing the most peculiar deed he'd ever laid eyes on: ownership papers for the Esperanza Ranch, purchased for the princely sum of $3 at a government auction back in Phoenix. Sam was a man of modest means but grand ambition. At 32, he'd spent the better part of his adult life drifting from one failed venture to another, first as a prospector in Colorado, then as a cattle hand in Texas, and most recently as a clerk in a Phoenix general store. When he'd heard about the government auction of abandoned properties, he'd scraped together what little money he had, hoping to find a small plot of land where he could finally put down roots. The Esperanza Ranch had been listed as abandoned and in disrepair, with no bidders expected. Sam had been the only one to raise his hand when the auctioneer called for $3. The ride to the ranch took him through some of the most beautiful and desolate country he'd ever seen. Red mesas rose like ancient monuments against the azure sky, while saguaro cacti stood sentinel over the desert floor. The stagecoach driver, a grizzled old-timer named Pete, regaled him with stories of the area's colorful past, tales of Apache raids, silver strikes, and the hardy souls who'd tried to tame this unforgiving land. "You sure you know what you're getting into, son?" Pete asked as they bounced along the rutted trail. "That Esperanza place has been empty for nigh on 2 years now. Old Don Carlos Mendoza, the fella who built it, passed on, and his family scattered to the four winds. Government seized it for back tax. Ain't nobody wanted to take it on. Too much work, too little water, and too many ghosts, if you ask me." Sam smiled grimly. "Ghosts don't scare me, Pete. It's the living that usually cause the most trouble." As they crested a small hill, the ranch finally came into view, and Sam's heart sank. The main house was a sprawling adobe structure that had seen better days. The red tile roof was missing several pieces, and the walls were cracked and weathered. The barn leaned precariously to one side, its doors hanging askew. Broken fencing stretched across the property like the ribs of some long-dead beast. But despite its sorry state, Sam could see the bones of something magnificent. The ranch sat in a natural bowl surrounded by low hills, with a creek running along its eastern border and enough grazing land to support a decent-sized herd. "Well, there she is," Pete announced, bringing the stagecoach to a halt in front of the house. "The Esperanza Ranch. Hope you brought plenty of elbow grease, son." Sam gathered his belongings and stepped down from the coach, his boots raising small clouds of dust. As Pete drove away, leaving him alone in the vast silence of the desert, Sam felt a mixture of excitement and trepidation. This was his chance to build something lasting, to prove to himself and the world that Samuel Mackenzie was more than just another drift. He was examining the broken gate when he heard it, the soft sound of a guitar being played somewhere nearby. The melody was hauntingly beautiful, a Spanish ballad that seemed to float on the desert breeze. Sam followed the sound around to the back of the house, where he discovered a small garden that someone had been tending. Tomato plants grew in neat rows, and a few chickens pecked at the ground near a makeshift coop. That's when he saw Bella's stand. She sat on the back porch of the house, her fingers dancing across the strings of an old guitar, completely absorbed in her music. She was perhaps 20 years old, with long black hair that caught the afternoon light and skin bronzed by the desert sun. She wore a simple white blouse and a dark skirt, and her feet were bare. There was something ethereal about her, as if she were a vision conjured by the heat and his own loneliness. When she noticed him standing there, she stopped playing abruptly and fixed him with a stare that could have melted steel. Her dark eyes flashed with a mixture of surprise and defiance. "¿Quién eres tú?" she demanded, setting the guitar aside and rising to her feet. "What are you doing on my grandfather's land?" Sam removed his hat, a gesture of respect that had been drilled into him since childhood. "Ma'am, I'm Samuel Mackenzie. I'm afraid there's been some confusion. I just purchased this property from the territorial government. I have the deed right here." He patted his satchel. The young woman's expression hardened. "My name is Isabella Mendoza, but everyone calls me Bella. This is the Esperanza Ranch, built by my grandfather, Don Carlos Mendoza. It has been in my family for 30 years, and I will not be driven from it by some gringo with a piece of paper. Sam found himself in an uncomfortable position. He'd expected to find an abandoned property, not a beautiful young woman who clearly considered this her home. Miss Mendoza, I understand this must be difficult, but the government seized this land for unpaid taxes. The sale was legal and proper. I paid $3 for it fair and square. Bella laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. $3? You bought my family's legacy for $3? Her voice rose with indignation. My grandfather spent his life building this ranch. He brought the first cattle to this valley, dug the first well, planted the first crops, and you think you can take it all for the price of a bottle of whiskey? Now hold on, Sam said, raising his hands in a placating gesture. I didn't know about your family's history with this place, but the fact remains that I own it now, legal and proper. However, I'm not an unreasonable man. Perhaps we can work something out. Bella's eyes narrowed. What kind of arrangement? Sam thought quickly. The truth was, he could use help getting the ranch back on its feet, and this young woman obviously knew the land better than he did. Well, you've clearly been taking care of the place, the garden, the chickens. That's good work. Maybe you could stay on as a caretaker of sorts. I could pay you a small wage. The suggestion seemed to offend Bella even more. You want me to work as a servant on my own family's land? Nunca. Never. She stepped closer to him, and Sam caught the scent of desert flowers and something uniquely her own. I have a better idea, Senor Mackenzie. You take your $3 deed and ride back to whatever hole you crawled out of. Find yourself another ranch to steal. Sam felt his own temper beginning to rise. He'd been nothing but polite and reasonable, and this woman was treating him like some kind of claim jumper. Now see here, Miss Mendoza. I didn't steal anything. I bought this property through proper legal channels. I'm sorry about your grandfather, but that doesn't change the facts. This ranch is mine now and I'm going to make something of it. Over my dead body, Bella replied, crossing her arms over her chest. That can be arranged, came a new voice from behind. He spun around to find himself facing three men on horseback. They were clearly vaqueros, Mexican cowboys, and they all had their hands resting casually on their gun belt. The man in the center, apparently their leader, was older than the other two, with graying hair and a weathered face marked by a long scar that ran from his left temple to his jaw. Bella, ¿estás bien? The scarred man asked, his eyes never leaving Sam. See, Miguel, this man claims he owns the ranch. He says he bought it for $3. Bella's voice carried a note of disdain that made Sam's cheeks burn. Miguel spat in the dust. $3, eh? That's about what a gringo's word is worth around here. He urged his horse forward a few steps. I am Miguel Vasquez, foreman of this ranch for 15 years. These are my men Carlos and Diego. We don't take kindly to strangers who come here making trouble for Señorita Bella. Sam realized he was in a precarious situation. He was outnumbered, outgunned, and clearly unwelcome. But he'd spent his last $3 on this ranch, and he'd be damned if he was going to be run off by a bunch of cowboys, no matter how intimidating they looked. I'm not making trouble for anyone, Sam said, keeping his voice steady. I'm the legal owner of this property, and I have every right to be here. Now I'm willing to discuss reasonable arrangements with Miss Mendoza, but I won't be threatened or intimidated. Miguel's hand moved closer to his gun. Maybe you didn't hear me, gringo. We don't want you here. Pack up your things and ride out, while you still can. The tension in the air was thick enough to cut with a knife. Sam could feel sweat beading on his forehead, and it wasn't just from the heat. He'd been in tight spots before, but never quite like that. He was about to respond when Bella stepped between him and the mounted men. Wait, she said, holding up her hand. Miguel, I appreciate your loyalty, but violence is not the answer. My grandfather would not have wanted blood spilled on his land. She turned to face Sam, her dark eyes studying him intently. You say you paid $3 for this ranch? That's right, Sam replied, wondering where this was leading. Then I challenge you to prove you deserve it. The challenge. The next morning dawned clear and hot, with the promise of another scorching day ahead. Sam had spent an uncomfortable night in the barn, having been firmly but politely ejected from the main house by Bella. He'd made a bed of hay and used his saddle as a pillow, but sleep had been elusive. Every creak and groan of the old building had him reaching for his gun, expecting Miguel and his men to return with less peaceful intention. As the sun climbed higher, Sam emerged from the barn to find Bella waiting for him by the well. She'd changed from her simple dress into practical work clothes, denim pants, a cotton shirt, and sturdy boots. Her hair was braided back, and she wore a wide-brimmed hat to protect her face from the sun. "Buenos dias, Señor Mackenzie," she said, her tone neutral but not unfriendly. "I trust you slept well?" "Well enough," Sam replied, though his aching back suggested otherwise. "About this challenge you mentioned yesterday," Bella nodded. "See, the challenge. My grandfather always said that a man should prove his worth through his actions, not his words or his money. If you truly believe you deserve this ranch, then you must show that you can make it prosper." Sam frowned. "What exactly are you proposing?" "A test," Bella said simply. "You have 30 days to prove that you can run this ranch successfully. If you succeed, I will accept your ownership and leave peacefully. If you fail," then you will admit that you are not worthy of my grandfather's legacy, and you will sell the ranch back to me." "Sell it back to you? For how much?" $3, Bella replied with a slight smile. "The same amount you paid for it." Sam considered the proposal. It seemed fair enough, though he suspected there was more to it than Bella was letting on. "What constitutes success? How will we measure whether I've proven myself?" "The ranch must be profitable," Bella said. "You must repair the essential buildings, restore the water system, and bring in enough cattle to stock the range. Most importantly, you must do it all without my help." "Without your help?" Sam raised an eyebrow. "Then where will you be during these 30 days? "Right here," Bella replied. "This is my home, and I will not leave it, but I will not lift a finger to help you succeed. In fact, I will do everything in my power to ensure that you fail." Sam felt a chill despite the morning heat. "You mean you'll sabotage my effort?" "I mean I will not make things easy for you," Bella clarified. "I will tend my garden, care for my chickens, and live my life as I always have. If that interferes with your plans, then perhaps you should reconsider whether you truly want this ranch." It was a dangerous game, but Sam found himself intrigued despite the risks. There was something about Bella's fierce determination that he admired, even as it frustrated him, and the truth was, he needed this ranch to succeed. He'd burned his bridges in Phoenix, and he had nowhere else to go. "All right," he said finally, "I accept your challenge. 30 days to prove myself, but I have one condition of my own." "Cuál es?" "If I succeed, you don't just leave peacefully, you stay and work with me as a partner. This ranch is too big for one person to handle alone, and you know this land better than anyone." Bella's eyes flashed with surprise and something else. "Was it respect? You would trust me as a partner after I've tried to drive you away?" "I'd rather have you working with me than against me," Sam admitted. "Besides, your grandfather built something special here. It would be a shame to let it die just because of pride and stubbornness." For a moment, Bella seemed to waver, then her expression hardened again. "We will see if you are still so generous with your offers after 30 days of trying to tame this land, but very well, I accept your condition. If you somehow manage to succeed, I will consider your partnership proposal." They shook hands on the deal, and Sam was surprised by the strength of Bella's grip. As their hands touched, he felt a jolt of electricity that had nothing to do with the dry desert air. From the way Bella quickly pulled her hand away, he suspected she'd felt it too. "Where do I Sam asked, looking around at the overwhelming amount of work that needed to be done. "That is for you to figure out," Bella replied. "But if I were you, I would start with water. Nothing else matters if the well runs dry." With that cryptic advice, she turned and walked back toward the house, leaving Sam alone with his thoughts and the daunting task ahead of him. The first order of business was to assess exactly what he was working with. Sam spent the morning exploring every inch of the ranch, taking mental notes of what needed to be repaired, replaced, or rebuilt entirely. The list was depressingly long. The main house needed a new roof, the barn required extensive structural work, and most of the fencing was beyond salvage. The water system that Bella had mentioned consisted of a well near the house and an elaborate network of irrigation ditches that had once carried water to the fields and pasture. Many of the ditches were clogged with debris or had collapsed entirely, but it wasn't all bad news. The wells still produced clean, sweet water, and the land itself was good, rich soil in the irrigated areas and decent grazing on the hillsides. The bones of a successful ranch were there. They just needed someone with the skill and determination to put them back together. Sam's first major decision was where to focus his limited resources. He had about $50 left to his name, enough to buy some basic supplies and materials, but nowhere near enough to hire the kind of help he really needed. He would have to do most of the work himself, which meant prioritizing ruthlessly. He decided to start with the barn. Without a proper place to store hay and shelter animals, nothing else would matter. The building was structurally sound but needed new support beams and a complete roof replacement. Sam hitched up the ranch's old wagon, one of the few pieces of equipment still in working order, and made the long trip into Copper Creek to buy lumber and supplies. The town's general store was run by a portly man named Henderson, who seemed genuinely surprised to see Sam. "You're the fella who bought the Esperanza place, aren't you?" he asked, as Sam loaded his purchases into the wagon. "Heard you paid $3 for it. That true? Word travels fast around here," Sam replied. Henderson chuckled. "Not much else to talk about in a town this size. You know that place is cursed, don't you? Old Don Carlos made a deal with the devil to find water in that desert, and when he died, the devil came to collect. That's why nobody else wanted it." "I don't believe in curses," Sam said, though he couldn't help but feel "Maybe not," Henderson replied, "but you might want to watch out for that granddaughter of his. Bella Mendoza is a wildcat, that one, pretty as a picture but dangerous as a rattlesnake. She's run off 3 suitors in the past year alone." Sam loaded the last of his supplies and climbed onto the wagon seat. "Thanks for the warning, but I think I can handle one young woman." Henderson's laughter followed him out of town. "That's what they all say, son. That's what they all say." Trials and tribulations. The first week of Sam's 30-day challenge proved to be a brutal introduction to the realities of ranch life in the Arizona Territory. Working from dawn to dusk in the punishing heat, he managed to shore up the barn's foundation and begin replacing the rotted support beams. It was backbreaking work, made more difficult by his lack of experience with construction and the constant awareness that Bella was watching his every move. True to her word, she made no effort to help him. In fact, she seemed to take a perverse pleasure in making his life more difficult. When he needed to use the well, he often found her there, taking her time filling water buckets for her garden. When he tried to work near the house, she would sit on the porch playing her guitar, the haunting melodies both beautiful and distracting. And every evening, as he collapsed exhausted in the barn, he could smell the delicious aromas of her cooking wafting from the kitchen, reminding him of the meager rations he was subsisting on. The worst incident came on the 5th day, when Sam was working on the barn roof in the blazing afternoon sun. He'd been up there for hours, replacing damaged tiles, when he realized he'd forgotten to bring water with him. His throat was parched, and he was beginning to feel dizzy from the heat. As he climbed down to get a drink, his foot slipped on a loose rung of the ladder, and he fell the last 6 feet to the ground, landing hard on his back. For a moment he lay there stunned, staring up at the cloudless sky and wondering if he'd broken anything important. That's when he heard the sound of running footsteps, and suddenly Bella was kneeling beside him, her face creased with concern. "Estás herido?" she asked urgently, her hands hovering over him, as if she wanted to check for injuries, but didn't dare touch him. "Are you hurt?" Sam tried to sit up and immediately regretted it as pain shot through his back. "I think I'm all right," he gasped. "Just knocked the wind out of me." Bella's relief was visible, but it was quickly replaced by anger. "Estúpido, what were you thinking? Working on that roof in this heat without water, you could have died of heat stroke." "I was trying to get the work done," Sam replied defensively. "I only have 30 days, remember? 30 days will do you no good if you're dead," Bella snapped. She stood up and brushed the dust off her skirt. "Wait here." She disappeared into the house and returned a few minutes later with a pitcher of cool water and a damp cloth. Despite her earlier declaration that she wouldn't help him, she knelt beside him again and pressed the cloth to his forehead. "Drink slowly," she instructed as she handed him a cup of water. "Too much too fast will make you sick." The water was the most delicious thing Sam had ever tasted. As he sipped it gratefully, he found himself studying Bella's face. Up close he could see the fine lines around her eyes that spoke of long days in the sun, and the calluses on her hands that told of hard work. She was even more beautiful than he'd first thought, but it was a beauty tempered by strength and resilience. "Thank you," he said quietly. Bella's cheeks flushed slightly, and she looked away. "I would do the same for any injured animal," she said, but her tone lacked its usual sharpness. "Is that what I am to you, an injured animal?" She met his eyes again, and for a moment, Sam thought he saw something softer in her expression. Then the walls went back up,
You are a stubborn gringo, who doesn't know when to quit, she said, standing up. But even stubborn gringos deserve to live.
Then who? Sam demanded. Someone's been sabotaging my work, and I want to know who. Bella was quiet for a long moment, her expression troubled. There are others who do not want to see this ranch succeed, she said finally. Men who would profit if the land remained abandoned. What kind of men? The kind who steal cattle and use empty ranches as hideouts, Bella replied grimly. The kind who would not hesitate to kill a man who got in their way. Sam felt a chill that had nothing to do with the evening air. Are you saying I'm in danger? I am saying you should be careful, Bella said. And perhaps you should reconsider this foolish challenge. $3 is not worth your life. But Sam was more determined than ever. He'd come too far to give up now, and the thought of being driven off by a bunch of rustlers only made him more stubborn. He began sleeping in the barn with his rifle close at hand, and he made sure to vary his routine so that potential enemies couldn't predict his movements. The sabotage continued, but Sam adapted. He learned to check his work each morning and to repair any damage before continuing with new projects. It slowed his progress, but it didn't stop him, and gradually he began to notice that the incidents were becoming less frequent. Whether his vigilance was paying off or his enemies were losing interest, he couldn't say, but he was grateful for the respite. By the end of the second week, Sam had restored the main irrigation channel and repaired about half of the fencing. He'd also managed to negotiate a deal with a cattle broker in Tucson to buy a small herd on credit, with payment due after the animals were delivered and sold. It was a risky arrangement, but it was the only way he could afford to stock the ranch within his 30-day deadline. As he worked, Sam became increasingly aware of Bella's presence. She maintained her policy of not helping him directly, but he noticed that she always seemed to be nearby when he was doing particularly dangerous work, and more than once he'd found small acts of kindness that he suspected came from her. A plate of food left where he would find it, a bucket of cool water placed in the shade where he was working, fresh bandages appearing in the barn after he'd cut his hand on a piece of rusty metal. When he tried to thank her for these gestures, she always denied any involvement. But Sam was beginning to understand that beneath Bella's fierce exterior was a woman with a generous heart, even if she was too proud to admit it. The reckoning, the final week of the challenge, arrived with a sense of urgency that had Sam working 18-hour days. The cattle were scheduled to arrive in 3 days, and he still had critical work to complete. The main pasture needed to be fenced, the water troughs had to be repaired, and he needed to build a proper corral near the barn. Most importantly, he had to prove that the ranch could be profitable, which meant having everything ready for the cattle broker's inspection. It was during this frantic final push that Sam's mysterious enemies made their boldest move yet. He awoke on the 27th day to find that someone had poisoned the well during the night. The water that had been sweet and clear the evening before now had an oily sheen and smelled of kerosene. Without water, the ranch was worthless, and Sam's challenge was effectively over. He stood staring at the ruined well, feeling 30 days of backbreaking work crumble around him. He'd come so close to success, only to be defeated by sabotage. The worst part was that he'd have to tell Bella she'd won, and he dreaded seeing the triumph in her eyes. But when he found her in the garden, her reaction wasn't what he expected. Instead of gloating, she looked genuinely distressed. "Dios mío," she exclaimed when he told her about the well. "This is terrible. Without water we cannot." She stopped abruptly, as if realizing what she'd said. "We?" Sam asked quietly. Bella's cheeks flushed. "I meant, the ranch cannot survive without water. This is a disaster for whoever owns." Sam studied her face, seeing past the words to the emotion beneath. "You don't want me to fail, do you?" For a moment Bella's composure cracked, and Sam saw the truth in her eyes. "I don't know what I want anymore," she admitted. "When you first arrived, I hated you for what you represented, the loss of my family's legacy. But these past weeks, watching you work so hard, seeing your determination, you are not the man I thought you were." "What kind of man did you think I was?" "A carpetbagger," Bella said simply. "Someone who would try to profit from our misfortune and then abandon the land when it became too difficult." But you truly care about this place, don't you? Sam nodded. I know it probably sounds crazy, but I fell in love with this ranch the moment I saw not just the land, but the dream of what it could become. Your grandfather had vision, Bella. He saw the potential in this desert, and he had the courage to pursue it. I want to honor that vision. Bella was quiet for a long moment, and when she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. There is another well. What? My grandfather dug a second well, deeper than the first, on the far side of the property. He never told the government about it, because he didn't trust them not to steal our water rights. It has been sealed for years, but the water should still be good. Sam felt a surge of hope. Will you show me where it is? Bella hesitated, and Sam could see the internal struggle playing out on her face. Helping him would mean abandoning her challenge, admitting that she wanted him to succeed. But not helping him would mean watching the ranch die, and Sam could see that the thought pained her. See, she said finally, I will show you, but first, we must deal with the men who poisoned the first well. They will not stop with sabotage if they think you are close to success. You know who they are? I have suspected for some time, Bella replied grimly. There is a man named Jake Morrison, who has been trying to buy this land for years. He wants to use it as a base for his cattle rustling operation. When the government seized it for taxes, he expected to be the only bidder at the auction. But I outbid him with $3. You outbid him with courage, Bella corrected. Morrison is a coward who only acts through hired thugs and sabotage. But now that you have proven the ranch can be restored, he will become desperate. As if summoned by their conversation, the sound of approaching horses reached their ears. Sam and Bella looked toward the main road to see a group of 6 riders approaching at a steady pace. Even from a distance, Sam could tell they weren't friendly visitors. Morrison, Bella said grimly. He has come to finish what his sabotage could not. Sam checked his rifle and made sure his sidearm was loaded. Get to the house, he told Bella, and stay away from the window. But Bella shook her head. This is my fight too. Morrison has been a threat to my family for years. It ends today. The riders pulled up in front of the house, and their leader, a tall thin man with cold eyes and a carefully waxed mustache, dismounted with theatrical flair. This had to be Jake Morrison, and Sam could see immediately why Bella had called him a coward. Despite his expensive clothes and polished boots, there was something weak and petulant about the man's face. Well, well, Morrison said, his voice carrying a mocking tone. If it isn't the $3 rancher and his Mexican girlfriend, I hear you've been having some trouble with your water supply. Nothing I can't handle, Sam replied evenly, though he was acutely aware of being outnumbered 6-1. Morrison laughed. Oh, I think you'll find your troubles are just beginning. You see, I've decided I want this ranch after all. I'm prepared to offer you $10 for it, more than 3 times what you paid. That's a tidy profit for a month's work. The ranch isn't for sale, Sam said. Everything's for sale at the right price, Morrison replied. The question is whether you're smart enough to take my generous offer, or whether you're going to make this difficult. Sam felt Bella move closer to him, and he could sense her tension. I said it's not for sale. Now I suggest you and your men ride out of here before someone gets hurt. Morrison's expression hardened. You're making a mistake, boy. I tried to do this the easy way, but you're too stupid to know when you're beaten. Boys, I think our friend here needs some convincing. The hired guns began to spread out, clearly preparing for a fight. Sam knew he was in serious trouble. He was a decent shot, but he couldn't take on 6 men at once. That's when he heard the sound of more horses approaching from behind the house. Miguel Vasquez rode into view, followed by Carlos and Diego. The 3 vaqueros positioned themselves between Morrison's men and the house, their hands resting casually on their gun belts. Senor Morrison, Miguel said politely, though his eyes were hard as flint. You are not welcome on this ranch. Morrison's confidence wavered slightly. This doesn't concern you, Miguel. This is between me and the gringo. Anything that concerns Senorita Bella concerns me, Miguel replied. And I think you will find that Senor Mackenzie has more friends than you realize. As if to prove his point, more riders appeared on the surrounding hills. Sam counted at least a dozen men, all armed and clearly loyal to Miguel. Morrison's hired guns began to look nervous, and their leader's face had gone pale. You're making a big mistake, Miguel, Morrison said, trying to salvage some dignity. I have powerful friends in Tucson, This isn't over. See, it is over, Bella said, stepping forward. You have terrorized my family for the last time, Morrison. If you or your men set foot on this ranch again, Miguel and his friends will be waiting for you. Morrison remounted his horse, his face twisted with rage. You'll regret this, all of you. I'll be back with the law, and we'll see how brave you are then. The law is welcome anytime, Sam said calmly. I have a legal deed to this property, and witnesses to your threats. I don't think the territorial marshal will be very sympathetic to your complaint. Morrison and his men rode away, but Sam knew this wasn't the end of their troubles. Men like Morrison didn't give up easily, and they had a tendency to become more dangerous when cornered. Thank you, Sam said to Miguel. I owe you my life. The old vaquero shrugged. Señorita Bella asked me to watch over you. I could not refuse such a request. Sam looked at Bella in surprise. You asked him to protect me. Bella's cheeks reddened. I asked him to protect the ranch, she said defensively. It would be a shame to see it fall into Morrison's hands after all the work that has been done. But Sam could see the truth in her eyes, and he felt something warm unfurl in his chest. Despite all her protests, Bella had been looking out for him. More than that, she'd been willing to set aside her pride and ask for help to keep him safe. About that second well, Sam said quietly. Bella nodded. Come, I will show you. The hidden well was located in a grove of cottonwood trees on the far side of the property, concealed by brush and years of neglect. It took Sam and Miguel's men most of the day to clear the debris and repair the pump mechanism, but when they finally brought up the first bucket of water, it was sweet and clear. Your grandfather was a wise man, Sam told Bella as they watched the water flow into the irrigation channel. This well will supply the ranch for generations. He always said that water was more valuable than gold in the desert, Bella replied. I think he would be pleased to see it being used again. The cattle arrived the next morning, right on schedule. Sam's heart swelled with pride as he watched the small herd spread out across the restored pastures. It wasn't a large operation yet, but it was a beginning. The ranch was alive again, and profitable enough to meet the terms of his challenge. That evening, as the sun set over the desert, Sam found Bella sitting on the porch with her guitar, but instead of the melancholy ballad she usually played, she was picking out a cheerful tune that seemed to dance on the evening breeze. I believe I've met the terms of our agreement, Sam said, settling into the chair beside her. Bella nodded. See, you have proven yourself worthy of this ranch. My grandfather would have respected you. And what about you? Do you respect me? Bella set down her guitar and looked at him directly. I more than respect you, Samuel Mackenzie. I have come to care for you. These past 30 days, watching you work so hard for something you believed in, seeing your kindness even when I was cruel to you, I realized that my grandfather's legacy is not just the land and the building. It is the dream of building something lasting and good. And I think he would want that dream to continue. Sam reached out and took her hand, marveling again at its strength and warmth. Then you'll stay, as my partner, as your partner, Bella agreed, and perhaps, in time, as something more. As they sat together watching the stars emerge in the vast desert sky, Sam reflected on the strange journey that had brought him to this moment. He'd come to Arizona with $3 and a desperate hope for a new beginning. He'd found something far more valuable than he'd ever dared to dream: a home, a purpose, and a woman who challenged him to be better than he'd ever thought possible. The Esperanza Ranch had lived up to its name, which meant hope in Spanish. And as Sam looked toward the future, he knew that hope was exactly what he'd found in this harsh but beautiful land, in the company of a woman whose fierce heart had captured his own. In the distance, a coyote howled at the moon, and Bella squeezed his hand. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but they would face them together. The $3 ranch had become something priceless, a testament to the power of determination, the value of second chances, and the magic that could happen when two stubborn hearts finally learned to trust each other.